Hey there, students. This starts now. Sorry about the delay on this. There was a problem with my streaming server. So Crowdcast, just as I was about to go live, had something go wrong, and so now we are live. I think that we're good now. All right. So with that, those of you on YouTube, okay, so we love everybody that's here, but at the same time, sometimes the YouTube chat gets to be a little much for me to keep up with. But at the same time, what you can do is you can go to crowdcast.io/Tom Richey. There is a link in the description. If you will refresh, those of you on YouTube, if you'll refresh, you'll see where it says crowdcast.io/Tom Richey. And that is, of course, going to also give you the opportunity if you'd like to sign up for the small group fireside chat session. Now, I'm going to be broadcasting now, and then, of course, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll also be broadcasting on Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. But we do have fireside chats available on Wednesday, tonight. Well, now it's Wednesday. Okay, so, Wednesday and tomorrow night, Thursday. So tonight and tomorrow night, 8 p.m. public broadcast, 10 p.m. fireside chats. Fireside chats usually last 90 minutes or a little bit over that. And so if you want to have some small group review, you can join that premium session. Now that's limited to 30 people because I want to preserve the small group element and make sure that people are able to get their questions answered. And so with that, let me make you aware of a few things. All right, so we're going to make sure that y'all are aware of all those opportunities coming up. Now, let me go ahead and a little word from our sponsors, and then we'll start answering the questions that are coming up in the Crowdcast. Okay, we've already got some questions coming in. Excellent. Okay, and so with that, let me make sure. So the crowdcast.io/Tom Richey to join us on Crowdcast. And also you can sign up for the fireside chat session if you'd like. Romulus AP US History Review, Romulus APUSH reviews available in the App Store and at Google Play. Got it down on the App Store to just $1.99. Let's go ahead and get that up there in education. It's just a handy little trivia app. If you're tired of writing DBQs and you just want to answer some little trivia questions, it's a handy way to study. It's a convenient and easy way to study, and I think that it's helpful. Like there are a lot of studies that indicate that quizzing yourself helps you out. Handy little app for your phone. Just a lot of trivia questions relative to relevant to APUSH. Now, of course, that is point of view. That is point of view, Tom Richey, who is trying to sell an app. So it may or may not be any good, right? So since he's trying to sell the app, he may be exaggerating the app's value to students, so go ahead and do your POV plus analysis. And that's always certainly welcome. But I'll be reminding you about Romulus APUSH review, and also noting that we've got the fireside chat that is going to be happening later this evening. Still got plenty of spots open for that, but if you want to be in a small group session, make sure we're doing that. Now, speaking of point of view analysis, we get a lot of questions about this. So let me go ahead and kind of start with this. If you Google POV, hold it down. Now, I don't know how many of y'all have seen that. This was from 2014. Y'all were quite young, right? Y'all were like middle school students. And there was this video of this woman who'd been arrested. She's being taken, I guess, to jail, or so. I don't know what's happening, but she's been accused of driving a getaway car. And she says, how am I going to drive a car? I cannot see. I'm legally blind. Now, then they ask, can you see at all? And she says, I can see, barely. And so, at the end there, she's like, Mama, I love you. POP, hold it down. They've even got an auto tune. So y'all should check this out. If you want some laughs, take a little study break. The video is called POP, hold it down. But a few years back, I made a sheet that I was like, you know what? Let's think about POV plus, HIP analysis, point of view, context, audience, purpose. How could we do this? So I made this sheet several years ago that I think is still very relevant, that I refer to every year. POV, hold it down. Okay, but if you've seen the video, it's going to be, add a little bit to the humor there. But one question that we get a lot is how on the DBQ are we going to do our HIP analysis? How do we do that? How do we do the POV plus? I always say POV plus because it's just something that makes it easier here, because it's point of view, but we can also get into historical context, audience, and purpose. And so I'll show y'all how to do a few of those things. And of course, I'm going to take some questions as well. And so when we look at, demographics, so when we're looking at point of view, it's not just naming, somebody's occupation, educational background, social class, politics, nationality, religious affiliation, age, gender, race. Now, gender, just because a woman is writing a document doesn't mean a gender point of view is necessarily relevant, but it should be considered. It's something that could be relevant. The majority of your documents that you'll see, especially the farther you go back, will have been written by men more than likely. And so when you see a document that was written by a woman, is that gender point of view relevant? Sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't be. And so we note here that on top of the POV, we think about situation, audience, and purpose. Situation or historical context, whatever we want to call it, right? So historical context, audience, and purpose. Now, for students who know a lot, okay, basically when you're putting historical context on a document, you're adding some clarity. You're going into something else that going on right around the document. So for students that know a lot of history, you're going to find yourself using that situational historical context. Audience tends to be something that's tough for people, but that is thinking about how does the audience, how do we think about the audience? So for example, when I am broadcasting live to a large group, there are a lot of shout outs. I'll frequently open up my phone and I'll shout out to new Instagram followers. Now, when we look at the fireside, when we go to the fireside chats and I'm just in there with just a handful of people, I'm not going to be constantly doing Instagram shout outs and that sort of thing. Want to shout out to Ariana Fernandez for the recent Instagram follow and Ben P. Sayers. Okay, so great. All right, so with that, the audience can be a little bit different. How does the audience affect what's being said? Think about you talk to your friends a different way than you talk to your parents, right? And so, when you're thinking about this before reading, what do you expect this person to say while reading? Is this person saying what you expected after you're reading? Does this person benefit from what was said? So, when you're thinking about this, that, for example, if I say that APUS history is the most important course you will ever take in high school, somebody could say, well, he teaches APUS history. So therefore, when people sign up for APUS history, Tom Richey benefits from people signing up for APUS history, and he's saying this in order to promote his course. Now, if your AP bio teacher says that, your AP bio teacher is saying instead that APUS history was the most important course that I ever took. I thought it made me a better citizen, a better American. We would think that because the AP bio teacher does not benefit from promoting APUS history, then APUS history must be an important course. And so you think about this, is this something that this person or their faction benefits from? So for example, I would think of Daniel Webster, so Daniel Webster, somebody you should know, Daniel Webster, 7th of March speech. Okay, when we're thinking about Daniel Webster's 7th of March speech, that is when Webster, of course, Compromise of 1850, there's my website there. So if you look at some lecture notes here, Daniel, I've got a video and a wrap on that. So Daniel Webster, okay, so Webster gave the 7th of March speech. Okay, so when you look at the 7th of March speech, Daniel Webster says, Mr. President, I wish to speak today not as a Massachusetts man, okay, not as a Massachusetts man, nor as a Northern man, but as an American, okay, or I think, did he say an American, to make it sound better, because Daniel Webster was a great orator, not as a Massachusetts man, nor as a Northern man, but as an American. And so a member of the United States Senate. And so he prefaces this, and Webster delivers a speech during the Compromise of 1850 where Webster ends up basically saying that the Southern complaints about fugitive slaves not being returned to the South are valid. Now, he was a senator from Massachusetts. So here is a Northern man who was giving a speech where he is actually saying something that his faction doesn't benefit from, that he certainly didn't benefit from. There was so much And this is where we could get in a historical context. If somebody saw the 7th of March speech, somebody could note that it provoked so much ire from Daniel Webster's constituents in Massachusetts that Daniel Webster eventually resigned his Senate seat to become Secretary of State. It was like to become Secretary of State, you know, like, oh, this is a new opportunity I can't pass up. Your constituents hate you. Okay, so the thing is, that would be a way to contextualize the 7th of March speech, basically to put that into historical context. Now, another thing you could do is the 7th of March speech, given that it is you know, in 1850, he's talking about fugitive slaves. You can contextualize this saying that he delivered this speech in the midst of the compromise, you know, the debate on the Compromise of 1850, and explain what the Compromise of 1850 is. So really what's happening is that when we're thinking about contextualizing a document, this is something that, you know, it's basically, it's a little bit like outside evidence, but the outside evidence does not have an appropriate social distance from the documents. When we're thinking about outside evidence, the concept of social distancing is very important because we have what's in the documents, okay? Now, if you want to contextualize the documents, you can stand right up on the documents, make sure you're wearing a mask, and stand right up on the documents. But then if you want outside evidence, it needs to be something separate from documents. Usually there will be a gap. For example, there's one DBQ that was given a while back on African Americans in the Civil War. Guess where the gap was? Okay, so if we were thinking about African Americans in the Civil War, what is the most obvious piece of outside evidence that we could consider? Okay, so let's think about that. What is the most obvious piece of outside evidence that we'd be able to consider there? And so with that, you would think it's probably not going to have the Emancipation Proclamation as a document. And so that's what you're dealing with there, that when we're thinking about that, that the Emancipation Proclamation is just not there at all, you would use that for outside evidence. Okay, so who's ready for the exam? Let's see who's ready for the exam here in the crowdcast. Okay, gonna ask who's ready for the exam. All right, so with that, let's see. So we've got the link that, yeah, so excellent. So we want to note that. Now going into, let's just see how the YouTube chat's looking. Okay, looking pretty good. All right, and I'm going to be, what do I need to do to get a 5? That's always the question, isn't it? All right, so with that, let's see. And remember, feel free to come into the crowdcast if you want me to be able to actually, you know, read what you're writing. The YouTube chat goes very quickly. Okay, so relevant to an argument in doing POV plus. Okay, so let's talk about this then. I'm going to pull up a I'm going to pull up something here where we're going to go into my democracy DBQ, and I will actually make this available to y'all. We can go in here and let me go ahead and share that. And we're going to give you an example of what they're saying when they do these things. Okay, so what we want to note here, let's see, anyone with the link can view. Okay, so we're good. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to the YouTube chat and, you know, the YouTube, and let's go ahead and put this in the video description. Okay, so the video description, democracy, DBQ, you know, setup and sample. Okay, so going with that, we'll note here, and let's see. So, all right, I've got that. If those of you on YouTube will refresh, those of you in Crowdcast, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat. All right, y'all got this, Evan. Yes, okay. So with this, got that in the chat. And so let's go ahead and take a look at what is it that they mean when they are looking in, you know, they're wanting to know that you're doing this, this, and this. Now with that, we want to know here, if you go push DBQ rubric 2020, what you're going to find there is you're going to find my APUSH DBQ page. We've got a copy of the rubric. Okay, so you've got a copy of the scoring rubric, which is telling you things. Now, 2 things we've got to do with the document. 3 things we got to do with the documents. First of all, you've got to accurately describe the content of at least 2 documents. Now, you could do like document 1 says, document 2 says. You know, Lauren Burden, thank you so much for the recent Instagram follow. We've also got recent follows from Anna Grace 2002, Lily Gaston, Randall Galson, and Paloma Morales. Thank y'all so much. Shira, thank you so much. S. Messler, thank you for the follows. So document 1 says, and then you can go from there. Now, I've got what I'm going to be looking at here is a DBQ. Now, I'm going to be broadcasting tomorrow. I guess we're done with Euro now. One thing to note, AP Euro had several prompts. Okay, so there were several prompts, but from what I can tell, none of those prompts came from like after 1850, and their boundaries 1914. So what we're seeing for Friday that's going to be very likely is that we're going to see multiple DBQ prompts. Now, you're not going to get to pick. You're going to be assigned one at random. We're going to see multiple prompts, and I don't see any of them edging right up to World War II, okay? Because remember, there were, now, I'm predicting this. Don't, this is just something that I'm thinking. People always want to hear my predictions. Take this as you will. But since there were a substantial amount of APUSH classes that did not get past World War I. Okay, I would think that World War I is probably going to be something of a boundary if I had to guess. And so looking at this, let's go ahead and see the effects of democracy. Okay, so this DBQ here that I wrote, the question is, evaluate the relative importance of different effects of the expansion of participatory democracy from 1816 to 1848. Now, we have had this format where it says evaluate the relative importance of different causes. And what you're being asked to do here is evaluate the relative importance of different effects, okay, of the expansion of participatory democracy, which, we have some that are pretty much ready to go. When we think about this stuff's in the course and exam description, that you have, popular campaigning and a more responsive, presidents that are more responsive to the people. You have an expansion of presidential power. You also could say manifest destiny. Also, antebellum reform movements are coming about because of the rise of democracy. You see a lot more, activism among people and social activism. So when we see here that, a way to do contextualization on a document, John C. Calhoun, Vice President of the United States, confidential letter to J.G. Swift. Now, what we want to note here is when it says confidential letter, it says that this is something that he did not want to say in public, okay? So when we're thinking about this, we want to think about the audience. This is somebody that obviously he's confiding in. And audience is something that is not easy to do, but it's something that when we think about this, you're always looking to figure out what are some special cases for point of view. And so with that, some special cases here, when we think about audience considerations, if it's a private letter to a friend, you confide in friends, you're more likely to give your honest opinion, and you're saying things that you might not want to say in public. So John C. Calhoun, as Vice President of the United States, has got to be careful about what he says. And so he says here, the mass of political and moral power, which carried the late administration through in triumph, has been wholly neglected in the new organization. And in the final stages of the election, the voices and the people and the power of the people has been set at naught. And the result has been a president elected not by them, but by a few ambitious men with a view of their own interest, I fear. This result has caused the deepest discontent, and in my opinion, deservedly. There is a solemn feeling of duty that it must be corrected at another election, or the liberty of the country will be in danger. Now, here's the thing. Seldom is a document ever going to do a plot twist. So one thing when we think about time-saving strategies, by this time, it's pretty obvious what Calhoun's talking about. Hopefully, when you saw 1825, you see Calhoun's the vice president. You see something here about Mr. Clay. You should already, by this point, understand that he's writing about the corrupt bargain. And so you can look at this in terms of this is something that he's writing in the context of the corrupt bargain. So with that, we want to note here. Now, let me see if I'm actually sharing my screen the way I mean to. A lot of times I have to remember this. Okay, let's share the screen on like full screen here. All right, so going with that. Let's see. Snahill, I wouldn't necessarily ignore the so-called period 4. When we think about the early 19th century, I would not ignore for that. I would be focusing my studying largely on the 19th century as a whole, really starting with Jefferson and going from there. I don't know why my screen is, not wanting to share fully. I'm not sure. Okay, so for some reason we've got a little problem with the screen sharing tonight. So with that, it should be evident what John C. Calhoun's talking about. Now, one thing that you might want to look up, my friends at Marco Learning and I have put together basically a guide to the DBQ. Okay, so when we think about here, so APUSH 2020 DBQ setup guide. Okay, so if you go to APUSH 2020 DBQ setup guide, practice guide for the new 2020 DBQ from Marco Learning, and we go over some strategies here, and we go 6.8 point, 10 points. I'll talk about that more at another time, but this is pretty self-explanatory. Like what I'm guessing, we don't know what a 3, 4, and 5 is going to be, but a 6, okay, is going to be, I don't see a scenario where a 6 is not a safe 3. Okay, so hopefully Velvers will get at least a safe 3, get 6. Eddie Berger, Assad Nair, and Ellie Weiner, Jerry Gong, Evan Blast, thank y'all so much for the recent Instagram follows. So 6 points should get you a safe 3. 8 points should be a safe 4. Now, I think that a 7 will likely be a 4, a 5 will likely be a 3. And then the 10-point scale. Now, what I warn everybody about, don't try it, Anakin. I have the high ground. That's like, Obi-Wan Kenobi, where it's like, unless you've gotten 10 points in time trials, like you have done this multiple times and gotten the same result, you're getting 10 points consistently. I would only use 3 of the 5 documents. I'd use 3 because that way you're going to get credit for 2, even if you messed one up. But there is a solid path to a safe, to a safe 4 using 3 of the documents and doing your outside evidence, your POVs, and then finally doing contextualization at the end. So with this document that John C. Calhoun's done here, what I'm doing here, let's make this a little bigger, especially since, I'm not able to share like a full screen share. All right. So basically, Calhoun expresses private opposition to the corrupt bargain. Okay. And so my historical context, I would be going into the corrupt bargain of 1824. Now, the corrupt bargain of 1824 is not going to be it's not going to be outside evidence because there's not a social distance. It's not 6 feet away from all of the other documents. So there is not enough social distancing to go into the corrupt bargain as outside evidence, but it can be used to provide additional historical context for document 1 and supports what argument. Now, what we would note here is, you could say the development of the second two-party system, that the rise of democracy creates the second two-party system. So these are possible arguments. And then remember that if you're using 3 documents, if you find a document or 2 to be difficult to use, confusing, or you're unsure how you would use that to argue, then you want to make sure to, to use that, if you're unsure how you're going to argue, then, if you're not going to argue with it, then why? Okay, so thank you, Christina, for the recent follow. Very much appreciated. All right, so going with that, we would look at document 2. So one time-saving strategy is once you understand the document and you can use it argumentatively, it's like, okay, Calhoun's obviously writing about the corrupt bargain and he doesn't like it. Then there you go. You've got it. He's expressing his opposition. Now then, Senator Henry Clay, the speech in the United States Senate, 1832. A bill to recharter the bank has recently passed Congress after much deliberation. In this body, we know that we are members enough who entertain no constitutional scruples to make, with the vote by which the bill was passed, a majority of 2/3. In the House of Representatives, also, it is believed there is a likely majority in favor of the bill. Notwithstanding this state of things, the president has rejected the bill. Okay, so has rejected the bill. Now we can kind of think about which bill is that he's rejecting. Okay, we see something about the bank. Okay, so now actually, we have so the bank bill. Yeah, so basically Jackson's bank recharge. So we can get into this. The president's rejected the bill, transmitted to the Senate an elaborate message communicating at large his objections. Now, if you know about Jackson's veto message, if you know the content of that, why he's vetoing, that he found it unconstitutional. Now, note here that Clay, of course, the father of the American system, does not view the bank as unconstitutional. And so we see here that the Constitution requires we should reconsider the bill and the question of its passage, the president's objections notwithstanding. Now, this is one of those things that I would keep reading because I'm not quite sure yet what Clay is saying. So you read until you get how you would use the document, because I'm saying, okay, Calhoun, there we go. You know, that we know what he's saying. It's not going to be anything new. Now, note here in the second paragraph, Clay begins to say the veto is an extraordinary power, which, though tolerated by the Constitution, was not expected by the convention to be used in ordinary cases. It was designed for instances of precipitate legislation in unguarded moments, thus restricted. It has been thus restricted by all former presidents. It might not be mischievous. During Mr. Madison's administration, 8 years, there occurred but 2 or 3 cases of its exercise. Now, what we note here, that during the last administration, I do not now recollect that it was once. Okay, so note that we're seeing here that Clay is making an argument that Jackson is making, some very broad use of the veto power beyond what other presidents have done. So what we see here is we've got a potential argument about possibly the growth in presidential power, or debates about federal power versus states' rights. Oh wait, never mind. We see here rise in presidential power and visibility, and the development of the second two-party system. So we've got a few arguments that we could use here, but Clay is criticizing Jackson's veto. Now, a Whig point of view, we could go into the bank war as contextualization. Now, document 3, we would, so going from there, we see document 3, this is the force bill. Okay, so this is the force bill, which some of you may recognize, 1833. Anything between 1828, 1833 is probably going to have to do, likely, especially if it's 1833, probably the nullification crisis if it's in Congress. So with that, we see that Congress, now some of y'all, if you don't recognize this as the force bill, some of you are probably going to be like, okay, I don't want to use that one. Okay, some of you may say that. It's okay. If you find something confusing, then don't worry about it, as long as you don't do that more than twice. Now, then we look here, there will be a visual source on the DBQ. So we see here Texas coming in 1844. Now, the 1844 election, you see that this is about the annexation of Texas. And we see there is Polk, who we should be able to identify as James K. Polk. And then, of course, there's Henry Clay. We see that Polk, now we can contextualize this going into Texas annexation, and how Polk, the Democrat, ran on this platform of manifest destiny. And so, you can see here that it's evident that the Whig Party is having a hard time. They're trying to keep Texas from coming in, but popular opinion is stopping them from keeping Texas from coming in, that the American public largely supports Texas annexation. And so Polk is campaigning on an issue that was popular. Poor Henry Clay, that he's so often, running in campaigns where it's just not like Jackson, where in 1832, he's like, let's make this a referendum on the bank. Now it's like, let's not support the annexation of Texas. All right. So, one thing that's curious, I was looking up the platforms. The Democratic platform in 1844, it endorses the annexation of Texas and the settlement of the Oregon question. Whereas, when we look at the Whig platform, it doesn't say anything about Texas. So when you see something like that, that the Whigs are, or not, like, that the Whigs are taking the less popular view. Okay, so we see there with document 4, James K. Polk welcomes Texas in the Union, manifest destiny, responsive government, all of that. Now, document 5 is Elizabeth Cady Stanton talking about women's suffrage. We can say, antebellum reform movements. We can pair this with a piece of outside evidence and use antebellum reform movements coming from it. So remember that with 2 pieces of outside evidence and only 5 documents, your outside evidence is going to have a major role informing your argument. Okay, so it's going to be not just about the documents, but see, if you're using 3 documents and 2 pieces of outside evidence, then your outside evidence is almost half of your argument. It's 40% of your argument. Thank you, Lexi Allen and Azim and Maria Vidal and on B6. Thank y'all so much. We've got Counterfeit Potato. That's interesting. And the Out of Towners, Vanessa Wasden. Thank you for what we've got here on Instagram. All right. So as far as that goes, we've got some new followers there. Thank you. Now, so what I've got here is the claim in body paragraph 1 is going to be on the second 2-party system. And the claim in body paragraph 2 is going to be the popular presidency. So what I have to do if I wanted to make a complex argument is I'd have to pick one of these as my primary, one of these as my secondary. So when we're looking at evidence from the documents, we've got, the corrupt bargain and Clay's bank veto. We've said here the rise of the second 2-party system. And then we see here the rise of the popular presidency. And so I could go into strict and loose construction on the bank veto. I could go into the log cabin and hard cider campaign here. So as far as that goes, my thesis is the most important effect of the expansion of participatory democracy between 1816 and 1848 was the rise of the second 2-party system. Another effect was a more popular presidency and campaigns on issues that the people wanted. So then we have a topic sentence. The rise of the second 2-party system out of the ashes of the era of good feelings was the most important effect of the rise of participatory democracy. After the election of 1824, so that's my topic sentence. Whatever's in here, if we're thinking about supporting arguments, then it needs to be about the rise of participatory democracy and the rise of the second 2-party system. So after the election of 1824, John C. Calhoun, the vice president, expressed his disgust with an election that he thought had been undemocratic. He claimed that in the next election, the errors of 1824 would be corrected. We see document 1. Calhoun was referring to the corrupt bar. Now, this is where we have specifically referenced the document. We have earned the right to cite, okay? So document 1, we have earned the right to cite. And so with that, we've earned the right to cite document 1. And then we see here Calhoun was referring to the corrupt bargain between John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay when Adams made Clay his Secretary of State after Clay supported him for the presidency. Andrew Jackson was elected president 4 years later, beginning the era of Jacksonian democracy. This gave some additional historical context. Remember, it's right next to the document. There's not enough social distancing for this to be outside evidence, but it gives context to the document. And so we have here a topic sentence. We have here a document that is specifically and argumentatively referenced, which supports this topic sentence. And then we have here that Calhoun is, basically giving some more context. Jackson's presidency was full of political controversies, such as Jackson's veto of the bill to recharter the national bank. Henry Clay criticized Jackson's veto as an abuse of presidential power. Clay criticized Jackson because he was Jackson's political opponent, and the bank was a part of Clay's American system of a national bank, internal improvements, and protective tariff. Remember NIP. You see how I just nipped this one, okay? So we've got NIP, National Bank, Internal Improvements, Protective Tariff. So Clay is criticizing Jackson because he saw, he was Jackson's political opponent. And I explained this, and so I've got a point of view. And then at the end of the paragraph, which I like outside evidence at the end of a paragraph, that's where I prefer to see it. And so what we see here is Jackson and the Democrats were strict. Wait, actually, yeah. So then I'm going to get into, let's see, contextualization. Now, what I can see here, yeah, this is something to note here. This explanation, like when we look here, is this contextualization or outside? Sometimes, you don't know. Is it contextualizing the document or is it creating outside evidence? Now, I'm going to have more than 2 POV pluses. So odds are somebody's going to take this and count this as, okay, that's going to be outside evidence. But what we could do is we could say that is going to be contextualization for document 2, and then this is going to be outside evidence, or somebody might treat this all as outside evidence. Okay, so then a second consequence, so that's a body paragraph. I'll let y'all go into that. You can read that, it's available to you. The rise of democracy, I'll restate my thesis. This is a restatement for insurance. Okay, so the rise of democracy in America between 1860 and 1848 resulted in the second two-party system that ended the era of good feelings. It also resulted in more responsive presidency, with presidents campaigning on issues that mattered to the people. Now, this thesis wasn't quite as sophisticated as the first one. It's okay. If you write the thesis twice, odds are one of them is going to be sophisticated. Now, another time-saving strategy. Well, not time saving, but time allocating. What I recommend is to write your contextualization last. Write your thesis first, then write your body paragraphs, and if time allows, go back up and do your contextualization. That way you're not in a rush where you're in the middle of a body paragraph and you're trying to finish that body paragraph as time's running out. You don't want to be in that situation. So with that, after the War of 1812, the United States experienced an era of good feelings when James Monroe was reelected to the presidency in 1820 almost unanimously. At that time, very few Americans actually cast votes for president, and the presidency was decided by elites. This all changed with the rise of participatory democracy, sometimes called Jacksonian democracy, which allowed all white men to vote, even if they did not have property. So the thing is, I've got like 3 content-rich sentences. I typically, what I say here about contextualization is 3 content-rich sentences. Now, since contextualization is often standalone, I think that it's smart to do the thesis, body paragraphs, and then you're piddling around with contextualization in the time that you have left. So hopefully that's something that helps you here. Now, remember, just Google POV, hold it down, and you can see pitfalls. And then when I'm live, I can't edit these things out, right? And examples of POV. Okay, so you would note here, as a Republican, the congressman may be defending the president primarily because he is a member of the same party. JFK spoke of a missile gap in 1958 in order to undermine the Republican administration in preparation for his upcoming presidential run. So with that, you can go ahead and check that out. Also think about to check out the video on YouTube. POP, hold it down. It's pretty funny. It was before y'all's time. It's pretty funny, especially if y'all like that. Some of the other videos, some of those classics, let's see. So Romulus APUSH review. Let's go ahead and see if we can. How's that moving? Now, it doesn't really move in real time, but 87, it lost ground. Oh my Lord, people. Okay, so with that, and remember that we've got the fireside chat tonight. We've got like 6 people in there right now. If it's just 6 people, I'll be in there at 10 p.m. with 6 people. Okay, so but a max of, it's capped at 30. So 30 people tops. That is crowdcast.io/Tom Richey to sign up for that. All right. So with that, let's go ahead. Oh, people love to know. Now, again, Kyrie, what we want to note here is that we're not looking at a DBQ topic. We're looking at DBQ topics. Okay, we're looking at DBQ topics, not a DBQ topic. Now, my prediction, okay, is that they will be focused in the 19th century largely. That's my prediction. Because when we look at the window, the fireside chat, that is a small group session. It's a premium session. It's a paid session, but I'm going to be with a small group of people. FDR did fireside chats. Okay, so yeah, the fireside chat is a premium session, but I'm going to be basically in there with a small group of people answering their question. So with that, yeah, the fireside chat, just go to crowdcast.io/Tom Richey, but I can also share that link. If y'all want a link to the fireside chat, I'll be glad to put links out there. So we've got some links here. So that is oh, thank you. Okay, so we've got fireside. Yeah. So if you want to join the fireside chat, I've got another one tomorrow night. But again, I'm doing free public broadcast. I've got tomorrow. I am like packed tomorrow. Okay. So I've got 1 p.m. and 8 p.m. on my channel. Then I'm also going to be on Marco Learning's YouTube channel. So make sure y'all are subscribed to Marco Learning, and I will also be on the Bill of Rights Institute's YouTube channel. So Marco Learning, youtube.com/Marco Learning. You can see that tomorrow I'm going to be, I'm going to be doing an APUSH review let's see, I don't, they don't have that on there yet, but we're going to be, yeah, so APUSH study session with Tom Richey, that is happening on Marco Learning's channel. So go ahead and subscribe to Marco Learning. That's going to be at 3 p.m. So basically tomorrow, 1 p.m. on my channel, 3 p.m. on Marco Learning's channel. 6:30 p.m. at the Bill of Rights Institute. Okay, so the Bill of Rights Institute is another channel that you want to be familiar with. Okay, so Bill of Rights Institute. If you go to the Bill of Rights Institute, there are a lot of live sessions I've already done, but this channel as well. So I'm going to be all over the place tomorrow. So basically 1 p.m. my channel, 3 p.m. Marco Learning, 6:30 p.m. Bill of Rights Institute, 8 p.m. back on my channel. Okay. And then of course there will be another fireside chat session. So with that, let's go ahead and get back to our questions. So I think that it's going to be somewhere in the 19th century. The reason I say that is because the last two DBQs have been turn of the 20th century, imperialism and progressive era. And then we've got the issue that we see that the College Board doesn't seem to be going right up to the line, because our issue is post-progressive era, World War I, a lot of students never got there. And so people are going to cry foul if the DBQ is on the 1920s, the Depression, or World War II. I think people are going to be very upset, especially if their class only got to the progressive era. So I would say that focus, now 3 years ago, it was on the American Revolution. So that's why I think that we're going to see a variety of topics that are mostly focused in the 19th century. Basically, the election of, the Jeffersonians through the Gilded Age. That's going to be what I'm going to think about. So what do you recommend if we do in the cram session the next 2 days if we don't know anything? Victor, okay, let's think about that. What do you recommend we do? Let's do POV analysis. Let's do POV analysis on me. What am I about to tell Victor? Okay, there are 2 things that I'm about to tell Victor, and of course that's coming from me. All right, so 2 things I'm about to tell Victor. What's one of them? Y'all go ahead and tell me. Okay, what are the 2 things I'm going to tell Victor to do? Okay, I'm going to tell Victor, first of all, to watch my YouTube channel, that I've got a lot of videos on APUSH on my YouTube channel. Next thing I'm going to tell him is to check out the Romulus APUSH Review app. So yeah, there you go. Now here's the thing. Y'all are doing POV analysis right now. You're like, look, Richie's going to tell him, download his app, watch his YouTube channel, because he benefits from those things. Now, personally, I think that, I think other people have benefited too, and hopefully you will. But as far as when you ask me what you should do, of course, I'm going to tell you, okay? Of course, I'm going to tell you, watch my YouTube videos, buy my app. Those are the things I'm going to say. And also I may say, well, follow me on Instagram for updates. Okay, so we've got here, we've got James 11566. Then on B6, did I already call you out? EH Klein 17. Also, if people follow Marco Learning during this broadcast, I will shout out before the end of the broadcast. Marco Learning has such funny stuff on Instagram. Okay, such funny stuff on Instagram. So y'all definitely want to take a look at that. Okay, so with that, then can I discuss the Reconstruction era? Victor, 1:00 p.m. tomorrow. The Reconstruction era is going to be my focus area. So Reconstruction is going to be the focus, 1 p.m. on Thursday. It's going to focus on Reconstruction. You'll be all Reconstructioned out by the time I finish that, because I've got a DBQ on Reconstruction. Let me go ahead and share that with y'all. Okay, I'm going to share my Reconstruction DBQ. So let's go ahead. And I'm going to share my Reconstruction DBQ with y'all so that y'all can show up if you want to. You can do this DBQ in advance. I'm going to put this into the description of the YouTube video. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put that there. So I'm going to go ahead and put the video in the description on Reconstruction. Okay, so we've got here a Reconstruction DBQ, and that's going to be part of what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. So Crowdcast, I'm going to put this in the chat. I've got this DBQ on Reconstruction, and then I'm going to also put that in the YouTube video description. Okay, so as far as that go, Crowdcast is you can still join us on Crowdcast. Okay, so then we're going to note here Reconstruction DBQ. Okay, so we're going to note that 2020 Reconstruction DBQ. And then I'll put here 2020 Effects of Democracy DBQ. Okay, so with that 2020 Effects of Democracy DBQ, I'm going to add that as well, so that we've got that one. All right, so with that, we're going to note here, get the link settings, and let me get that in there, and we're going to get that. We're going to be in business. All right, so y'all go ahead and refresh on YouTube. You should be able to download those DBQs. Okay, you should be able to download those DBQs on through the YouTube video description. Okay, so that's going to be happening. All right, so going on, let's continue with our Q&A. All right, so with that, let's see what we got here. And I tell you, I'd love to see Marco Learning get over 4,000 subscribers during this broadcast. They've got 3.77. 3,700, but they're probably not going to get there tonight, but we'll get them there tomorrow. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get back to our questions and Jacksonian policies. Okay, so when we're thinking about Jacksonian democracy, basically when we're looking at the second two-party system, okay, so the second two-party system that we want to focus on here, let's go ahead and okay, so the second two-party system, let's go ahead, the age of Jackson, and let's bring that up, shall we? We shall. All right. All right, the second two-party system, let's go ahead and share my screen for a little bit, and let's think about the policies of the Jacksonians and the Whigs. A quick review of the two-party system. Okay, so as far as that's going, let's go ahead and pull up. All right, let's see if it's going to let us, not going to let us emphasize that, but you should still be able to kind of see it there. So what we're going to note here is the second two-party system was made up of the Democrats and the Whigs, okay? And so as far as that goes, Henry Clay was the leader of the Whigs, Andrew Jackson was the leader of the Democrats, okay? So as far as federalism, okay, so nationalistic, Henry Clay's Whigs, Henry Clay is like the new Hamilton, oh, Hamilton, okay, and Jackson is kind of the new Jefferson. It's basically the two-party system, to oversimplify it, that Jackson has a lot more Jeffersonian views and, Clay has a lot more Hamiltonian views. So that's something that's important there. Okay, wondering if Avery Butterworth on Instagram is a Jacksonian or a fan of Henry Clay. All right, so we see here that the Jacksonians are about states' rights. The Whigs tend to be a little more elitist, whereas the Democrats tend to be, well, democratic. The moral reformers tended to support, tended to be Whigs, whereas the Jacksonians, not so much. The Constitution, loose construction for Clay, strict construction for the Democrats. Now, we want to note that once again, Clay and Jackson are in a disagreement about whether there should be a Bank of the United States, okay, whether there should be a Bank of the United States, and so that, and whether that bank is constitutional, okay. So let's see. So then the economy, like Hamilton, Henry Clay believes that okay, so Instagram follows. All right, so that basically the American system, that the government should get involved in economic development. Jackson's like laissez-faire. The Maysville Road bill, like this was a bill that was in, basically the Maysville Road was a bill that was to build a road in Kentucky. Okay, so to build a road in Kentucky that was supposed to help commerce, but Jackson's like, look, that's in one state. Kentucky should build that. And think about this: who's from Kentucky? Henry Clay. It's like a pork barrel project before the age of pork barrel spending. Now, sectional support, the Whigs tended to be most prominent in the Northeast, whereas we see that the Democrats, the farther south, the farther west, the more popular Jackson was. Now, the American system, national bank, internal improvements, protective tariff. The Democrats largely are against central banking, against internal improvements and federally funded internal improvements in the protective tariff. Now, note that the Whig Party was basically a minority party throughout this time. Okay, so the Democrats, for the most part, did control the machinery of government for the most part during the antebellum era. Clay is kind of ahead of his time. During the Gilded Age, we're going to see that the government is much more friendly to Henry Clay's view of the federal government rather than Jackson's. Okay. So as far as that, yeah, Reconstruction is going to be, is going to be tomorrow. So with that, yeah, so we will be on Reconstruction tomorrow. Tips for grouping documents. Okay. Joyce, how many of y'all have seen, like, how many of, okay, let's see, how many of y'all have seen Talladega Nights, which my quoting Will Ferrell movies doesn't work as well as it did 10 years ago. Who has seen Talladega Nights? Okay, Ricky Bobby. Okay, so Ricky Bobby, me, not me. Okay. Now remember, go to crowdcast.io/Tom Richey. In order to participate in the Crowdcast session, answer polls, be able to talk where I can actually see you, and then also to sign up if you're interested in the fireside chat session. Okay. Now, if you go to YouTube and put in Ricky Bobby, Dear Lord, Baby Jesus. Okay. And the thing is, how do I group the documents? Group them however you want. Ricky Bobby's always saying the blessing. He's like, Dear Lord, baby Jesus. And he's like, and they're like, why? He's not a baby anymore. He grew up. And he's like, I prefer to imagine Jesus as a baby. Now, you can group documents in any way that is historically defensible. And usually when you're dealing with causation, the causes are already kind of in your head. Like, you should kind of understand already that, yeah, because of Jacksonian democracy, you've got antebellum reform movements, manifest destiny, a more powerful presidency, popular campaigning, the second two-party system. Anything you can defend is fair game. Okay. And so as far as that goes, it looks like, let's see, Anna Koch, you followed Marco Learning, you get a shout out. Okay. You get a shout out here. So you followed Marco Learning, you get a shout out. So the thing is, when you're thinking about, but yeah, go just search on YouTube, Ricky Bobby, Dear Lord, Baby Jesus. And he's like, look, I want to imagine Jesus as a baby. And if somebody wants to imagine Jesus as a baby, I mean, make the arguments that you want. So you basically get documents that you're going to group together, based on, you're grouping these documents together based on what you feel can be used to make logical arguments. And remember to incorporate outside evidence in your grouping. So for example, on that Democracy DBQ, we see that Elizabeth Cady Stanton is there. She's somebody that is, Elizabeth Cady Stanton is a woman's suffrage advocate, but we can then go into abolitionism and make an argument about antebellum reform movements. So remember that one document and one piece of outside evidence, they can come together to form an argument. So anything that you can get multiple pieces of evidence to support, whether it is, from the documents or not, that's going to constitute something that will be helpful. To you. Okay, and it looks like maybe since I shouted out, we've got followers from Marco Learning all of a sudden. All right, A. Guzman, let's see, Yogesh, Jerry Gong, and Stephen. All right, Stephen's. All right, great, Stephen. Good to see you here. And Alex Monroy. Okay, thank y'all for the follows there for my friends at Marco Learning. All right, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be wrapping up this broadcast. I mean, y'all can tell my voice is kind of like, I need to be careful about my voice because I've got to last till Friday. I've basically been streaming for Gov, Euro, so I'm going to try to get a good night's sleep tonight. Of course, I will be doing the fireside chat at 10 p.m. That's crowdcast.io/Tom Richey. And I'm going to need to kind of rest my voice a little bit coming up on that. So hopefully y'all understand. I hope that's okay with y'all, but I will be back. I'm basically going to be doing APUSH streaming all day tomorrow. 1 o'clock, my channel. 3 o'clock, Marco Learning. 6:30, Bill of Rights Institute. 8 o'clock, my channel. And then I'll be back on Friday morning at 10 o'clock and we'll have breakfast together. Okay. So that's going to happen tomorrow. So y'all want to make sure that y'all are subscribed to Marco Learning, Bill of Rights Institute. We're going to have some great stuff coming up. Okay. And so, oh, wow, we've got a few more here. Roma started following. Okay. So great. WHO14. Okay. It's funny. Once I start shouting out, people are like, okay, I'm going to follow. Brian Queller. We've got Rachel Winkaker. and Snay Hill 24. Hello, Malik. And let's see, real Devin Campbell, not the fake Devin Campbell. And as I'm on my way out, let me shout out to people who have who have followed me. Annalie 1112. Spam account in the way. It's a spam account. I'm getting followed by spam accounts. Brian again, Max C. Nelson, RCMA _ on each side. Nikita's Clapsis. All right. So we've got then Stay Hill 24, Ray _X_X. All right. Thank y'all so much for the support. That has been, it's been an honor, definitely. And so with that, remember, I'm going to be streaming basically all day. If you want to join tonight's fireside chat, we've now got 9 people in there. Like I said, I mean, it's an opportunity for like a small group vibe, and I'm answering specific questions from y'all. On public streams, I really just can't get to everyone's question. So that's why I do the fireside chats. Just to, give people that opportunity. And, also, get to, get a little bit of compensation for all the time I spend streaming here. No, I'm not going to lower the cost. It's the invisible hand. I mean, I've been filling those things up all week. So this is, as far as that goes, that's something just, it's the invisible hand, Adam Smith. Okay. But as far as, and really, I don't mind if it's 9 people. I'll be glad if it's 9 people. I'll be glad if it's 29 people. But there's also a fireside chat tomorrow night. I've never been asked. So people say lower the cost. I've never been asked for a refund. Nobody's ever asked me for a refund for a small group session. Like, people find them very helpful. It's very focused, and, we're able to, really get to work in a way that we're not able to quite in a public session with so much going on. But I will be back. I will be back tomorrow, and basically all day. Okay. You're gonna be like, okay, I've seen enough of you, Tom Richey. So with that, y'all, if you pray, say a little prayer for me, for my voice and all of that kind of stuff, because I'm gonna need it for just a little bit longer. All right. So with that, yeah, I think that Bob, are you a teacher or a student? Very curious. But yeah, I think that what we saw in Euro, what we saw there, Devin, I love you too. Bob, I'm wondering about, if you're a teacher or student, because Euro, from what I'm hearing, we've heard Napoleon, the Reformation, the Enlightenment. And so basically you're seeing a combination of topics, all of them being mainstream and accessible. Yeah, so that's something that I think that we definitely, and I'll also, Bob, do you think that, we've got Vicky and Bob in here, that, in terms of, now, it could be anywhere from 1754 to 1945, but I'm really thinking that it's, the 20th century seems unlikely, given that that we see from Euro, where they've got a good social distance between the end of the course and the DBQ. Okay, so that's something. Now, we don't want to totally write the 20th century off, but if we're thinking about prioritizing our studying, I'm thinking, Vicky and I both agree, and we're corroborating. Vicky and I are corroborating, both teachers, that you need to be looking at the 1800s in the middle of the course. So Reconstruction tomorrow will be the focus of tomorrow's broadcast. Remember, check out Romulus APUSH review. It's a very handy little cheap way to review, just with trivia questions, and that builds those connections in your brain. So of course, POV me, right? And with that, I will see some of y'all at the fireside chat. I will see all of y'all plus more people at the 1 p.m. broadcast tomorrow that's going to focus on Reconstruction. Remember to download, if you're on YouTube, there's a link in the description to download the Reconstruction DBQ. All right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's always a pleasure, and I will, I will be there pretty soon. All right. See y'all at 1 o'clock tomorrow.